Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third e-kapihan of the Philippine Franchise Association. This is Dr. Carl Balita, and I'll be your moderator for today. And I will not be alone doing this job because I'll be joined in by no less than the multi-awarded entrepreneur, a woman advocate, and of course, an author, the president of the Philippine Franchise Association, to lead us in the prayer and to join me in this moderation job for the third e-kapihan of the PFA. Good afternoon, She.
Good afternoon, Doc Carl. Good afternoon to all our participants this afternoon. Let us please bow our heads in prayer. Almighty God and Father, we thank you for gathering us this afternoon in our online forum aimed at guiding the Philippine franchising sector navigate through COVID-19 crisis towards the road to recovery. While the things remain uncertain, we thank you for opportunities like this where you allow us to see the ways that we can adjust and adapt to the current difficulties. As we gather here, we also uplift our minds to our frontliners, our health workers, law enforcement officers, and workers of essential services who lay their lives on the line so that we can still have a semblance of normalcy despite the challenging times. We also commit to you, our leaders, so that they are always guided in all that they do. Lastly, we pray for protection and good health. We pray that you guide us out of this crisis and emerge as better citizens of the world, valuing people and planet as we conduct our respective businesses. All this we pray, trusting in your providence and mercy. Amen.
Amen. Hi, good morning, partner. We're glad to be back, and this is another Wednesday with the PFA. Diba? It has become a tradition. You know, I missed
and
you last
happy
week.
Easter.
Happy Easter, and happy Easter, everyone. You know, I missed you last week, partner, because I thought that we would still have it. Naging part na ng Wednesdays ko ang ikapihan of the PFA. And what a beautiful way to spend a Wednesday with our businessmen and women from all over the country and some parts of the world.
Yes, Dr. Carl, and we have an overwhelming participation this afternoon. We're gone beyond our expectation, di ba?
As usual, of course, the number increased, and I was worried this morning because I saw that there were 1,400 registrants, and that's not gonna be, I mean, the capacity of our Zoom channel is only 1,000, and currently they are watching us from the official Facebook account of the Philippine Franchise Association. That's FB of the Philippine Franchise Association. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you have friends who are having difficulty entering the Zoom classroom we have, the webinar place we have right now, please just tell them to watch it live at the PFA Facebook. And partners, what makes you excited today?
This is very exciting because as we talk of, or as we have every topic for our Wednesdays e-kapihan, we're always adapting to the needs. So I'm also very excited because what we're going to talk this afternoon is preparing us not just for this situation, but making us resilient and better entrepreneurs for the future. So it is very exciting, and we're also joined by top-notch entrepreneurs this afternoon. I'm excited to introduce them, but later yon. So, power cast, di ba?
Power cast. And I promise, we promise, the PFA will make this promise this afternoon that this is gonna be worth it. And we are so excited about this. In fact, kahapon pa lang when we did the dry run, I was already very excited to be moderating this again. And partner, let's bring the mother of Philippine franchising on the spotlight so that she can welcome us officially in this third ikapihan of the Philippine Franchise Association. Good afternoon, Ma'am Bing.
Good afternoon to you all, and happy Easter. Welcome you to the third PFA ikapihan, which is the Resilient Enterprise Now, Next, and Beyond. We are doing this to help our members amidst the global pandemics, and so that we can give you the best programs that can keep the gears of industry going despite the lockdown and the extended community quarantine, which has greatly jeopardized businesses, thus affecting the lives of millions of families. Foster e-copy hunt. As we said, we have the power speakers with us, and wishing you this productive e-copy hunt, and magandang hapon po, and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Of course, very
Thank you,
motherly.
Ma'am
Partner,
Jean.
she ended it with a very motherly statement again. Stay safe. And of course, that's the best advice we can probably give everyone, including our businessmen who are worried about how we can see the present and the future. All right, partner, can you introduce our topic today? Do the honor.
Yes, for our e-copy and today we have the resilient enterprise. The resilient enterprise now, next, beyond. The business resiliency, it's about our business resiliency and our enterprise preparedness.
All right. The keywords are now, next, and beyond. Beautiful indeed. Because, sabi nga,
Beyond.
if you're afraid of tomorrow, don't be afraid unless you're not preparing for it. But, we are creating the future, so you might as well not be afraid of it. All right. So, by the way, we'd like to make some administrative concerns, administrative advices to everyone. First, if you are interested to ask questions, or direct it to a particular panelist, please use the Q&A box that you can find in your screen. But if you just want to socialize or just to say hi, hello to anyone in the panel, you may use the chat room. I repeat, we will not entertain questions posted in the chat box. Instead, we will only entertain questions that are posted in our Q&A. By the way, if you have some specific questions posted in the Q&A box, so the panelists may be able to address it as a reply, as a text reply to you, because as panelists, we can see all your questions coming in. And again, please advise those who are having difficulty entering our Zoom classroom, please tell them to watch us live at the PFA Facebook account. All right, and we will have time for your questions. And I guarantee you, it's going to be full of learning this afternoon. All right, partner, would you like to kick it off and introduce
Ye-
our speaker for this afternoon?
Yes, I'm so excited to introduce our speaker. Our resource speaker this afternoon has provided advisory work in finance transformation engagements, specializing in global business services and service delivery management for multinational companies. She is experienced in handling multiple cross-border engagement, providing leadership to both local and international teams. She has a vast experience in different sectors, primarily in consumer industries, logistics, real estate, and healthcare. An accountancy graduate from the University of Santo Tomas, our speaker also completed the Management Acceleration Program of INSEAD Singapore and Harvard Leadership Program by Harvard Business School in October 2019. She is a partner for performance improvement of SGV and Company. So please let us all welcome Ms. Maria Katrina Makaisa to give a talk on business disruption and operational resiliency. Hi, Kay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the very warm introduction, Cheryl. Thank you, Carl, as well for hosting this event. Before I start, I'd like to thank the association first for inviting us to share some of our insights and some of our thoughts around how businesses can actually navigate through the crisis that we are in at the moment. So what I'd like to do is I'll just quickly share my screen. I've prepared a deck that we can use more or less to guide us in our discussion. Let me just quickly put that into slideshow. So given that what we're we are seeing right now in terms of the pandemic, we see that this is primarily, I would say, a humanitarian crisis. This is not something that, this is something actually that has caught us unaware. And based on what Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus mentioned in his speech before during March 11, wherein he actually said that COVID-19 is now a pandemic. This is not just a public health crisis. It is actually a crisis that will definitely touch every sector. And perhaps in terms of the sector here, he's probably talking about the different minorities or different races and different countries that are involved in the whole economy that we are part of. But what I'd like to do is put this into a business context. And taking from what he mentioned here earlier, I'll now flip to the next slide, wherein we can see here that more or less all of the sectors are impacted heavily by what we're seeing in how COVID-19 is developing across the globe. And the impact that it has across the sector would actually vary depending on what industry you belong to. So you can see here, I'm sharing that there is a bigger impact on industries that are on the left, so namely tourism and hospitality and aviation, and perhaps a moderate impact on those that are on the right. So that's consumer products and consumer electronics. What I'd like to do at this point is to maybe elaborate more on some of the sectors that we have here. I'll start first with tourism and hospitality. So as far as we can see, tourism and hospitality has been heavily or severely impacted by the pandemic. Based on what the government has mandated, wherein we're now placed in ECQ and we are now mandated to practice and actually observe social distancing, the tourism and hospitality sector, along with the aviation, has been impacted because people are now limited in terms of movement. So people are not allowed to move around, and even cargo at some point is being restricted from moving from different countries. There are now travel restrictions, border closures, and it has severely impacted this particular sector. So if you think about it, actually April until June would be more or less the season wherein you would see people going on vacation. And it's a season wherein people are most likely to really go out on vacation. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we have no choice. Either we cancel our trips or we have no choice because maybe there is a restriction risk moving around. And we see that this could go on not only during summer, but it could likely be delayed until winter, or I think until a vaccine has been developed and it's made available for everyone. And even if there's already a vaccine, I think people would still be quite hesitant to actually go around, mainly because they still fear that there could be transmission of the disease. And that is, I think, going to prolong the agony or the impact in the tourism, hospitality, and the aviation sector. Now, I'll go to oil and gas. In oil and gas, we see that even prior to the pandemic, there's already an ongoing price war. So we see that there is a likelihood, if not already happening, that there's an oversupply of oil. And if we then add on the limited industrial and commercial activity that is happening now, it further impacts the oversupply of oil across the different markets. And we see that if this is not, in a way, if there's no intervention done in terms of managing the oversupply, based on estimates that we've seen, it's likely that we would have probably around 3.6 million barrels of oil daily that is in oversupply. And it would likely take 4 years before the demand and supply will balance off. So this is something that we think if economic activity, industrial activity, and commercial activity will resume, then hopefully oil and gas would be able to rebound more quickly than expected. So the third item, which is, to be very honest with you, it's really close to my heart, mainly because my experience and background is in the consumer product sector. And when we talk about consumer products here, we're talking about food, we're talking about food manufacturing, beverage, personal care, healthcare, and other products that are available for consumption by the different consumers, we see that there is a moderate impact, or at least in the beginning of the announcement of the ECQ, there's a moderate decline in private consumption. However, we need to further maybe stratify it, because we need to acknowledge that there is a demand still for essential goods versus the non-essential goods. So if you're more or less in the essential goods, more or less you are in a way cushioned by the ECQ, because again the government is actually supporting movement, manufacturing, and even provision of these essential goods across the country. And at some point, even exports or imports related to these essential goods are allowed by our government. Although if you think about it, I think in the first 2 weeks or maybe the first 2 days, there has actually been a challenge in the supply chain. There is an oversupply of vegetables in the northern part of the country, and there's a scarcity in other parts or areas of the country, and the logistics is a bit restricted because of the lockdown, and there were no policies in the first 2 days of the ECQ when it was mandated by the government. We think as well that the consumer product sector is impacted in terms of labor. Mainly, we see that there could be labor shortages if it's not already existing. Some manufacturing companies are observing social distancing as well. So in terms of productivity in their manufacturing lines, I don't think they're hitting maybe around 60% or 70% productivity, because again, they need to limit some of the economic or manufacturing activity they have so that they could observe the social distancing mandate. So basically what this tells us is that across the different industries, other than there is a level of severity of impact across the industries, you might want to look into the impact around personnel, operations, supply chains, and revenue. And what I'm sharing now is again a research material that we got from Avasant, and it gives you a picture of what is happening and the severity of impact across these 4 key areas. However, we think that this is still a bit too high in terms of creating action plans that would be, or activities that would be able to tackle the challenges that we're seeing across these 4 key areas. To sum up the first 2 slides that I've shared, this pandemic is actually a test of your company's resilience, and responding to this requires a structured approach. When we have discussed with our clients and when we reached out to our clients during the initial phases of the COVID situation, most of them would tell us different insights and different inputs, different challenges, depending on their role in the organization or in the enterprise. So like the CFO would most likely, or the finance manager would most likely be worried about liquidity. If you're someone who's looking after the operations, you're more or less worried about labor, about the employee health and safety, as well as your procurement, sourcing, manufacturing. And if you're more or less in marketing, you're actually worried about how do I get my products to the market. And there's really a huge challenge from an enterprise or business point of view to put all of these together and to make sure that we are managing our business and responding to this crisis in a holistic and inclusive way. So as what I would like to say is that necessity is really the mother of invention, as quoted by Plato before. What we've done internally in SGV and also in EY, which is where we are a member firm of, we've come up with a way to help our clients to make it easier for them to navigate the chaos that we're seeing because of the pandemic. And in the next 2 slides, or maybe next 4 slides rather, I will be sharing with you the framework and also the thinking behind it and why we think this should be relevant and why this is critical for organizations to look into. So I'll now share the enterprise resilience framework, now, next, and beyond. So this is the framework that we have drafted and created that we think would resonate well with our clients, mainly because we've taken the analysis further into the different resilience themes or areas of focus that organizations should and must look into. So this framework has two items in it that I want you to take away out of this session. So the first one would be the resilience themes, which are the 9 items that are in the gray circles. And then the other one are the time horizons that you need to look into or plan for. And that's the now, next, and beyond. So we've created this framework. We've shared more or less what we mean by employee health and well-being, talent and workforce, etc. But we think that this would not be as helpful if we just send this over to our client without them having a view of what this exactly means. I mean, the bullet points that I'm sharing here, I think is not really, I would say exhaustive or I think meaty enough for you to get any insights out of it. So what we've done is we've created a resiliency tool, which I will share. This is the enterprise resiliency tool that we are currently sharing across our clients, mainly because we think that this is our way of making sure that our clients, businesses, everyone in the industry would be able to access this and plan ahead and also address the crisis that they are currently facing. So let me just quickly take you through the tool so that you'll be able to later on use this and have your own analysis. But before I go on how the tool works, this is how I would probably suggest you conduct the use of this tool. So the first one is you can do this individually. You could do this on your own or perhaps with your business partners and with the leaders or your management team. You might want to look into this first as a group and then assess how prepared you are in terms of addressing the current crisis that we are facing. The second option that you can take is answer it first and then reach out to us if in case there's something that you need more clarity on or if in case you would want to talk further. And then the third one would be a joint workshop or session with us wherein we will take you through the items in the tool and guide you and your organization as you discuss this and as you assess your preparedness for crisis. So I'll now go through the tool. There are tabs here that would more or less show the questions that you need to answer as you assess your readiness for a crisis, or at least in this particular case for COVID-19. So this is the overall summary worksheet. And this is more or less a copy of the framework I shared to you earlier in the PowerPoint slide. And basically, I would suggest that you focus first on the people issues or challenges. So those are challenges that are around employee health and well-being and talent and workforce. After that, you can probably go to each of the facets or each of the key areas that are focusing on resiliency, depending on which you think you need more clarity or need to do more thinking or analysis on. So having said that, I'll just quickly take you through on how to use the tool. So let's say we go to employee health and well-being. There are questions here that we need you to think about or we want you to think about and consider for you to be able to assess, are you prepared to address your employees' health and well-being? So the questions are answerable by yes, no, or not applicable. And depending on your answer, a score will be provided on top of the worksheet. So you could see here, if you answer yes, then it's more or less 100%, and no, it would influence your score in terms of preparedness. But what I want you to really look into, or what I don't want you to be obsessed with, is on the numbers. The numbers are just an indicator of how prepared you are. I think the richness and the value of this material or of this tool would be the qualitative information that you will share across your organization. And that's where you can see some of the issues or challenges surfacing. And then at the same time, you can now tackle and see how you can actually address those issues or gaps that you're seeing in terms of your preparedness for this specific facet.
Miss
So
Kay,
employee,
may I
yes, sorry.
interrupt you? May I interrupt you? Can you please refresh your slides because it's not something we can see, that particular slide that you're talking about right now.
Oh, okay,
This is
hang
already the
on.
tool, right? Yeah, you're talking about the tool already. We're still seeing the framework, the resiliency framework.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Let me
We
just
move on.
quickly share this.
Yes, the next
Yeah.
slide.
Is this better?
No, yeah, that one. That one is better. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. But quickly, I'll just share with you the first worksheet that I was going through earlier.
Yeah.
Again, this is a copy of the framework. And more or less, what you would see in this framework would be a summary of how you answered the different key areas or facets for your resiliency. So as mentioned earlier, if you go to employee health and well-being, there are questions here that you will answer with yes, no, or not applicable. And depending on how you answer it, there will be a score that will be flashed or will be calculated on top of the worksheet that will give you an indicator more or less of how resilient you are or how prepared you are in terms of employee health and well-being. So as you can see here, I'm just trying to answer this. More or less, you would see the preparedness score moving or changing. And if you go back to the summary preparedness score, it will then be reflected here. And an overall preparedness score will also be given to you. What I'd like to reiterate again is that it's not about the numbers. I guess for me, I'm a CPA, so this would mean something for me. But to be honest, we need to see beyond the quantitative information that the tool will turn out. What you need to really focus on would be the discussion and the qualitative information that you need to capture as well in this particular tool. So if we talk about employee health and well-being, this is more on your readiness or preparedness in making sure that you have measures, policies, and procedures in place to protect your employees and make sure that the workplace or your business or organization is ready to address any challenges around health and safety. I'll go now quickly to talent. For talent and workforce, this would be this slide or sorry, this worksheet will ask you questions around how are you managing your current workforce and are you able to anticipate any critical hiring, any critical or if any maybe anticipate potential layoffs, what are the risks around it, and what are your plans in terms of how you will manage your employees, given that maybe some of them might need to work remotely, and how do you even measure their productivity? So those are some of the themes or questions that will be around talent and workforce. I will not go through all of these, but what I want to maybe just highlight would be those that are around supply chain. It's critical and important that we assess how resilient our supply chain is, mainly because in some of our clients, when the pandemic happened and ECQ was mandated and border restrictions were also cascaded, they realized that some of the products that they have are not readily available to them. And it has caused a lot of issues in terms of their manufacturing or even in their production. And in some cases, at the same time, even the the going concern or the ability of your suppliers to actually be sustainable and provide you with the necessary inputs as you manage your supply chain. So those are some of the things that you need to start thinking around for you to be able to say that you are resilient and prepared to navigate through this crisis. I'll probably pick two or three more items here. One is on financial. I saw a question earlier in the Q&A. How do I manage my liquidity? Because there are some challenges in terms of collections. There are challenges in terms of my suppliers now asking me to pay as early as I can. So these are areas wherein you might want to consider, am I doing enough financial planning and forecasting? And do I have a view of what's going to happen in the next week, 1 month, 2 months? And also plan for different scenarios. We have a client wherein they've actually created 3 scenarios and they've planned against it. So the first one is if the ECQ will be lifted on April 15, which is today, how will my business operate or how will it look like? What is the financial impact to me? The second scenario they plan for is if the ECQ ends at April 30 or May 15, what is the long-term impact to me? impact as well to my organization if a vaccine is not developed within the next 12 to 18 months. So we need to start thinking around, do we even have the information or data for us to be able to do a scenario planning or forecasting? So hopefully these questions would be able to surface some of the gaps that are now existing in your organization in terms of preparedness towards any type of disruption, may it be COVID, digital disruption, or any disruption that could actually impact your business. The last one that I would probably tackle more about is on the customer side. So this one, I'm seeing that in some organizations, they were actually caught unaware or they were surprised when the ECQ was actually mandated. And they had no way of how they would be able to maybe complete the contracts with their client. They had no idea of how they would connect and reach out to their customers. And most crisis management teams would have to think on their feet for them to be able to operate within the week from the time that the ECQ has been mandated. So those are some of the questions that I know at the moment and is in crisis. Hopefully, going through all of these questions would give you some clarity and structure, and in a way, peace of mind that you are actually focusing on the key areas of your business, not just the financials, not just on the customers, but really even those areas that we think are not relevant to say that we are a resilient enterprise. So that is the tool. And once you have answered all of the questions, again, as mentioned, it will give you an overall preparedness score. And best practice would say that, or best practice actually for using this tool is that you don't do this just once. Like you don't do it today and then forget about it and not even try to open it after you have completed the tool. The key here is to be consistent in assessing how resilient you are. So the key here is that every time you have maybe a crisis management meeting, a management meeting, or if there are any changes in the parameters that you are operating in, it's always good to look back and reflect on how we are doing in terms of resiliency by using this tool. And again, reflecting and working with your business partners, with your management team, for you to be able to craft a better now, next, and beyond for your business. So that is the view of the framework and also of the tool. I'll now switch back to the slides that I am sharing earlier because as mentioned, this framework tackles two things. So the first one will be the key areas of focus that needs to be addressed to manage your resiliency. And the second one would be the three horizons or the time frames that you need to plan for. Normally, when you're running a business, you don't just look at the short-term objectives. You would have to look at the long-term
Okay, excuse me.
objectives, and you need to be able. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
Carl.
can you please go back to the slides? I think technically it I mean focused on you. Can we go back to the slides and share it? Yeah,
Sure. Sorry about that.
no problem kasi nagkakaroon din
Yeah,
ng signal glitch. So
yeah.
but
I think there's some challenges on the signal. Is this
as
better?
usual,
Can you see the screen now?
can you please share screen? All right, we want to see it. Can you please refresh? Because
Yeah.
na nag-fluctuate yung signal natin and the sharing this.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah. Meantime, I'll cancel you on Spotlight. Can you please go? Yeah, there. You're trying to share
Sure.
it now. Thank you very much.
Yes, sorry. So yeah, so I was talking about earlier how the framework talks about two things. So the first is on the key areas of consideration or the resiliency themes, and the second one is the time frame or the three horizons that businesses should look into. So currently, we see that because of disruption and around business transformation, leaders are more or less required to really simultaneously balance the short-term and the long-term objectives. In one of our classes before, we usually call it the duality of strategy. which means that as you try to maximize your assets and as you try to protect your assets and maximize the revenue or the opportunities that are seeing in the now, you need to have an eye on what is next or what is on the beyond or on the different time frames and be able to manage shifting your current businesses from the now into the next and beyond. So that's more or less what the duality of strategy means. And from a resiliency standpoint, we hope that the framework will be able to help you think now. So again, we worked on the 9 key areas of resiliency. And hopefully, as you go through it, you would be able to manage your business in terms of business continuity and crisis planning. And it's just really addressing the current crisis that we are facing. But hopefully, you don't just stop on working in addressing the crisis, but also seeing what's next. Because the problem is if you're stuck in the now, you might be in a way sacrificing the long term for the short term. And this is where you plan for the future. Now that you know that there are around 3 to 6 months, and this is where you plan for the future. Now that you know that there are gaps, there are challenges in terms of how you're running your enterprise and how resilient or maybe lacking in resiliency your business is, hopefully you now plan to build a resilient enterprise. Respond to the medium-term challenges and opportunities that are coming or that are disrupting in your sector. What is happening or what is impacting your sector? Because again, depending on the sector that you are playing in, the impact might be different. So you need to always go back to that as well. And then lastly, think about beyond. So when we talk about beyond, this would likely be around 6 to 12 months. And the view is you need to be able to reframe your future. And by reframing your future, you're now planning to transform your enterprise to succeed and be resilient. And around this area or in the beyond time frame, you're now looking at what are the innovations or what are the opportunities that surface now that I think would still be relevant in the future. We hear the term new normal, and what we think is that when we say new normal, our view is there would be changes around consumer behavior. People might be, I don't know, maybe buying more online. They might be hesitant into going to gatherings or going back into the way that we do things before because they think, hey, we can actually work from home. I think even other companies are now thinking that, hey, work from home actually works. So why do we have to pay for so much rent just for us to be able to hold office in a building, etc. So there would be changes around that. We see that there are going to be a lot of technological innovations because of what happened. There would also be, I think, rebalancing in terms of the global economics and trade. I just saw earlier that I think at least the forecast by IMF is maybe 0% growth globally to maybe in a pessimistic view up to maybe 5%, a negative 5% growth. So that is really scary and that is something that we need to plan for. And in times of crisis, while we look at the danger that is in front of us and while we try to adjust and in a way manage during the time of crisis and danger, we need to be able to see what is the opportunity behind it, what is the upside to this disruption. So that's more or less the time frame or the 3 horizons that you really need to plan for and think about as well. I'll go now to the next slide, which would more or less give you an idea of what will happen if you put those two together. So again, I'll go back to what I said earlier that the framework would talk about the 9 key areas and also the time frame. So this is just an example of, and this is an example for the consumer industry. And again, this is very broad, still high level, and the responses or the specific actions and questions would be different depending on the size of your business, the industry that you are part of, or even your ways of working. So just an example for the now. some of the immediate questions that you might want to address would be, is there a rapid response team that will keep your stakeholders informed? What is the specific action that you need to take then to make sure that there is a team that will be interacting both internally and externally to make sure that your business is still stable and to provide assurance to your stakeholders that everything in a way is in control or maybe not. So it would depend on the current state that you are in now. If we go to the next, what are the possible questions that you might want to ask yourselves or the business leaders and your management team? So a question here that we have surfaced is, do you have a plan for disruption to supply and demand? So I'm not sure if you've heard about strategic partnership when it comes to working with suppliers. For some companies, it worked before, but I think when the pandemic happened and there's actually a limitation in terms of logistics, there was a problem of fulfilling the demand because there's not enough supply coming in from our suppliers. And we now have to rethink what is the right balance between having strategic partnerships and making sure that we have enough layer or a tiering of suppliers to support our supply chain. Next one, are you maintaining liquidity and cash flow? So this is, I think, a very hot topic at the moment. So I'm really glad that the government is cascading policies around helping MSMEs and also employees that are part of those MSMEs that I think would be really helpful, no, in making sure that the economy is in a way insulated. But I think there's still going to be a massive impact to our economy moving forward. But in a way, asking yourself, what is really liquidity about? What is cash flow? How do we manage it? You need then to put in specific actions for you to address some of these questions to put you in a way, in a level of assurance of confidence that you have this look into and taken control of. And then lastly, on the beyond, it's probably around, can you turn short-term responses into long-term resilience? So what are the plan or what are the impacts that we're seeing in the short term that we think could change the game in the long run? And how can we probably bring our organization from where we are now to that future that we are seeing? So that's how you would want to use the tool. Again, it doesn't stop with just asking or answering the questions there, but it's actually coming up with a view of what you need to do in the now, next, and beyond, and what are the specific actions that you need to take for you to be able to build your business into a resilient enterprise or business. So I'll wrap that up quickly. I hope that you've learned something from what I've shared earlier. And to summarize and to land the message, building and strengthening the enterprise resilience is not an easy task. There has to be a method and a structure to it, so that you would be able to see what are the things that you really need to look into and focus on. And I think that's the imperative for now. It's really surviving and managing through business continuity. But it's not enough that we just address the now. Resiliency means that we are also taking the next step further to thrive, which is in the next, and even to transform our businesses. So we hope that as you use this tool, as you use this framework, you could become a leader that can ensure your organization is prepared for what's next and beyond. And we hope that this will help you lead your organization into transforming your current state or your current organization into a resilient business enterprise that can actually contribute to building a better working world no matter what the new normal would be. So with that, I'll end my presentation. I'm sharing here a QR code, by the way, if in case you can actually scan the QR code and you could be directed to some of the thought leadership links that we have within the firm around responding to COVID. Again, thank you so much for inviting me to be here, and I hope that you will take some of the points that I've mentioned earlier and actually put that into practice and use that as you build your enterprises or businesses into resilience. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Wow, 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 wow. Of course, the question uh, is I mean, it's always, how do we get that tool, partner? Yun ang tanong ng napakarami. By the way, I'd like to suggest muna po, before we answer that question, please don't use the chat room as if you are in Facebook. Okay, may I request you to stop your share? Thank you. Para we can, yeah, we can proceed to the other part.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, and also,
Yes,
Doc
partner.
Carl,
Yes.
oo, kasi some are still, some have concerns with audio. So siguro we can, have ourselves nearer to the mic then.
Yeah, among
So,
specialists, yeah. But Kay naman did it so well, especially
yes, of
part
course.
doon na siya may problema. I was supposed to butt in earlier. And by the way, if you're experiencing something like black screen or you just want to say thank you, good, and ask, please, again, I repeat, you are not in Facebook Live. We are in a Zoom space. And this is like a conference that you don't stand up because you want to ask a question. Okay, there's a place for your question. Please put it in the Q&A, but I'd like to make a warning. You cannot ask questions from anonymous participants, please. If you want your questions answered, please write your name or please change your name, and we don't want to entertain questions from Mr. or Miss Anonymous. Yeah, the question is, how do we get a copy of that tool? The answer is later. The answer is later. Stay on. We'll answer that question later, of course.
Yes.
EFA is very generous. SGV is also very generous. So the answer is yes, it will be shared. But as to how, you better find out towards the end part of this virtual conference. Thank you very much. Okay, partner, anong say mo doon? Anong sasabi mo doon?
Grabe, it was a breathtaking presentation. Thank you, Kay. And as we are all caught off guard, no, with the pandemic, with the crisis, but every day is a different experience, partner. That's why every week nga, when we have the e-copyhan, we have different topics that as much as possible adapt to whatever our participants, mostly our entrepreneurs, are facing. But these presentations is actually taking us parang sort of, because we've been looking at the silver lining of all this crisis, no? I think the pandemic gave us an opportunity to test our company's resiliency. Also, syempre, napakabigat na experience. But the silver lining is that there is still a redemption, no, for all of us, for entrepreneurs, to go from now to next and beyond. So
right.
that is very exciting.
Yeah. What do you do with the now? You solve because there is a problem. What do you do with the next? Explore. And what do you do with the beyond? Imagine. Okay, nakuha natin yon, ha? So solve the now, explore the next, imagine the beyond. All right, partner. By the way, I'd like to promote as early as now. She mentioned about changes in consumer behavior. And let me tell everyone right here that at this very moment as we speak, the PFA is already organizing that next Saturday's ikapihan. And mind you, let me just leak it without your permission, Cyril. I would like to leak it to the participants now that next conference will actually talk about consumer behavior. And
Yes.
Chris Lim is already not, fixing this, and baka within the day we will be able to announce. All right. Sige, She, let's proceed.
Perfect. Okay, so let us go to our panelists. So our panelists are actually top-notch entrepreneurs who will share with us in terms of how we are our experiences, their experiences ongoing through the pandemic. So our first panelist is the CEO of Sea Oil Philippines Incorporated, the largest and leading independent fuel company in the Philippines, with over 500 gasoline stations nationwide, and became a Hall of Fame franchisor in 2008. In 2015, 2016, and 2017, up to 2018, Sea Oil received the Asia's Best Employer Brand Award from the Employer Brand Institute World HRD Congress, Stars of the Industry Group, and Asian Confederation of Businesses. Our panelist is also the Regional Director for North Luzon of the Philippine Franchise Association. I am grateful to hear from Mr. Francis Glenn Yu.
Hey, hi.
Hi, Glenn.
Hi, Cheryl.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Doc Carl.
Hi.
Thank you. Yeah. Good afternoon. Can
Hi.
you hear me okay?
Very well. Very well. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So let me take this opportunity to thank the PFA first and foremost to be a panelist in this third ECAPIHAN. And let me just dive into the material that I've prepared. It's really going to be related to the talk of Kay earlier. So what are we doing now? What do we plan to do next? And so let me just start by saying that the situation that we find ourselves in is a circumstance that is unprecedented. And we need to safeguard our lives and at the same time safeguard our livelihoods. Now, Wuhan, which was the epicenter of the virus, was in lockdown for 76 days. I think for us here in Luzon, with the ECQ and in Manila, it's 31 days so far. So, from an oil industry standpoint, um, we expect oil demand to be down between 5 to 11 million barrels a day for 2019, but with current demand in April to be between 20 to 30 million barrels per day lower due to the lockdowns. Now, how does this um, translate to what is happening on the ground? About 80 of our stations are currently closed. It's a combination of company-owned stations and franchisee-operated stations. And our mindset and our view is that we are hoping for the best, but plan for the worst. So, what are the actions that we've been taking so far? We've been having daily BCP calls with our senior leaders in the first several weeks of the lockdown. And first thing that we've done in terms of addressing our employee needs is we've shipped masks, disposable gloves, alcohol to all our stations and terminals, and provided added guidance for disinfection, as well as how to handle cash transactions. We formed a Sea Oil Warriors group for mutual support for our Sea Oil frontliners. Now, 99% of our office and field-based staff have been working from home over the past month. So we've been able to transition to telework arrangements for majority of our employees. And we're monitoring on a daily basis the supply chain, addressing delivery issues, and cash flow monitoring, especially at the station. Now, it's important during this time for us as business people not to forget to do good. So we've also launched our Fueling Heroes program to support frontliners, the national government, and LGUs during the lockdown with free and discounted fuel. So these are the things that we're doing now. Now, what are we doing next? We are currently assisting our franchisees in securing rental waivers. We're applying um, on their behalf for the Dole COVID Adjustment Measures Program for frontliners. We're working on our revised budget for Q2 to Q4, and we're realigning this with current realities, the expectation that demand will return gradually. Now, for if you're wondering, in 2003 for SARS, it took 9 months before things returned to normal. Now, based on current estimates for a muted recovery, and this is our base case, we believe that the world is going to go back to pre-COVID levels Q4 of 2022. And the best case is for us to go back to pre-COVID levels on Q1 of 2021. So this will entail changes to our CapEx and OpEx budgets. We're also working on liquidity, as Kay mentioned, for the next 6 to 9 months. So that's how far we're looking at in terms of our liquidity requirements. And of course, as we go through the quarantine, we're in the process of identifying weaknesses in terms of how the organization is handling the current ECQ. and we're seeking to mitigate risks associated to these gaps that have been identified. We're also asking, how can we participate in restarting the economy? I think many business people are interested and are thinking about what is going to happen when the ECQ is lifted. And we're wanting to participate, and we're actively looking at the rapid antibody testing to allow people, to allow our frontliners to be tested with this test kit so that we can identify um, and issue immunity certificates. I think Germany has been looking at that actively, and reports in Bloomberg are saying that within the next 2 to 4 weeks, then they will have the capability and capacity to test and issue immunity certificates to people. Now, what about beyond? So I've talked about what we've done over the past month, what we're currently looking at over the next couple of months. But after that, what can we look forward to in terms of beyond? And Kay mentioned what are the new norms, and at least for us, what we're seeing that's very um, uh, obvious at this point is the move towards contactless transactions. So GCash, PayMaya, GrabPay, making the necessary preparations to move towards that. So that's something that we're concerned about. Second is, what are the new drivers of demand in a world where neighborhoods are more self-sufficient? So I think many of us are starting to realize that there's a lot of the things that we normally need, our basic necessities, we can really source them from our own neighborhoods. And there is a new word that people are saying in terms of B2C, and it's bodega to consumer. So that's something that we're interested in looking at as well. And the third is, what are the added safety preparedness protocols that are going to be needed for a post-quarantine world where there is still developing a vaccine, no? Where there's no vaccine that's currently present. So we're looking at multiple scenarios as well for our supply chain to ensure redundancies and consider the possibility of making our work from home arrangements the norm. So those are just some of the things that we're looking at. I'm hoping that from a framework standpoint, with what Kate presented, what I've just shared are some practical things that we've been trying to do in terms of applying these principles to our company. And with that, let me just use this opportunity to thank the PFA again for inviting me to be a panelist on behalf of Sea Oil. And for those of you who are attending this Ikapihan, you can follow us on Facebook at Sea Oil, on Twitter, and on Instagram.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Take care of our lives and our livelihood. Yung ganda ng quote. And the
Yes.
transaction, new drivers of demand toward self-sufficiency. Totoo, no? Parang iba na talaga yung normal ngayon. And we just realized that what
Yes.
were impossible is now being made possible. And really, creativity is the mother of invention, no?
Yes.
Home-based productivity and learning to learn together without physical contact. We never thought this was possible before, no? Yes, partner.
Yes, partner. We're very excited because as everyone would be able to see, our resource speaker as well as our panelists, we have our panelists from different sectors, no. All in franchising, but of course, thank you so much, Glenn, who represents the retail and petroleum sector. And our next panel would be from the tourism sector. But partner, I just like to acknowledge our trade counselor from Los Angeles is one of our participants this afternoon. Hello to our trade counselor from LA, Mr. Eric Elnar, as well as our people from the Department of Trade and Industry, Regional Operations Group. Partner, ang dami nila. We have from Aurora, Pampanga, Legazpi, Albay, Bulacan, Laguna, Davao, Surigao del Sur, and Bohol.
Yes. But let me remind them, if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A, not in the chat room, because currently we're already consolidating the questions that we will ask later. All right?
Yes.
Go ahead. Let's proceed to our next panelist, partner.
Okay, so our panelists from the tourism sector and also part of the Philippine Franchise Association Board of Trustees. Our second panelist is the President and CEO of FinMa Microtel Hotels Incorporated and FinMa Hospitality Incorporated, managing 14 microtels by Wyndham and one TRYP by Wyndham operating in the country. He has more than 30 years of experience of extensive domestic and international management experience in the hospitality industry. For his game-changing role in the hospitality industry, our panelist was honored with the Industry Entrepreneur 2015 Award in the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Philippines. He was credited for developing a new category of hotel accommodations in the country. And in 2007, he was recognized the most inspiring tourism entrepreneur by Go Negosyo. He is also the board of director for foreign franchises for non-food of the Philippine Franchise Association. Please let us all welcome Mr. Jose Marie Del Rosario. Good afternoon, Marie.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me well? Can
Yeah,
you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Am I speaking close enough to the mic?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, President of PFA, and Dr. Carl Balita. I just want you to know I'm a fan, listening to your program every weekend. And that just to say, Dr. Carl, madami ka natutulungan with insights, especially those that you challenge with your, I think you challenged them with 500 peso capital, and they are supposed to report back to you with a successful enterprise.
Thank you
But
so much.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Also, before I start, I'd like to say a little special shout out to Sammy Lim, our founding chairman. I hope you're well, and I hear from the shares that you have on the social media, you have recovered almost fully. And please, Chris Lim, please extend our well wishes, and that we hope that he will fully recover and probably, hopefully, listening at this time as well. Let me proceed then. As was mentioned by Kay earlier and seen in many of the news reports, the tourism and the hospitality industry has really and is continuing to be hit very severely by this COVID-19. Just to give everybody a picture of how big the tourism and hospitality industry is, not by numbers, I just want to share that it's not only hotels and restaurants, but including the airlines, cruise liners, theme parks, souvenir shops, spas, bars, banquet halls, and even stadiums and arenas, theaters and cinemas. All of these are impacted by what is happening now. And you can just imagine the scope of how many people are affected, especially families that are depending on this kind of work. Let me introduce you a little bit to Microtel. We are a chain of hotels. It's an international chain belonging to the Wyndham Hotel family, the largest of the franchised hotels in the world. But here in the Philippines, we have 14 microtels, one trip hotel. They are located as far as north in Baguio and as far down as in Davao and General Santos in Mindanao. In addition to that, we have a few more independent hotels that are not using the brand name. So in total, we have about 20 hotels that we're operating, small as 50 rooms and as big as nearly 200 rooms. Be that as it may, we still consider ourselves part of the SMEs because each location for us is a strategic business unit. Of those number that I mentioned, 40% are operating, and a lot of them are catering to the BPOs that are still allowed to operate. I sincerely want to take advantage of this and thank our staff in Microtel that are still reporting to work. Really admirable way that they have gone through day in, day night, away from their families to be just be of service to the industry and to their work. The human side of in our case, we have about 800 or so employees, and we don't distinguish whether they're contractual or direct hire. And of those, only about 180 are able to work at the moment. So we're talking about 600 that are displaced. We've gone to the extent of paying them mostly up to the original end of the COVID ECQ, but some have had to cease operations early. As I said earlier, it's amazing how staff who want to just get to work are even walking as far as Cavite to Mall of Asia just to report for work. It's important to note that right off the start, as part of the FINMA group, we have had business resiliency seminars that evolved as many of us, probably they've started out as fire drills and then evolved into earthquake drills, but it has taken into a different level of seriousness. And there are teams that are dedicated to business resiliency and disruption. And there are already scenario buildings that have been put in place for business continuity programs. These have been very, very important tools for us to be able to tap into resource materials that we have thought of beforehand. And it has come into place whenever we have had typhoons in some of our locations or earthquake, or in the case of our property in Boracay, which have had to close for 6 months. Those have really been very handy in the sense that we have had to relocate some of our employees to the different branches. And because of the advantage of having a network, we have been able to, well, as I said, relocate them, but given additional exposure to some of those that surprisingly have not even had a chance to be out of the province, first time to be in Metro Manila, some of them first time to ride an airplane. So it has really been a good exercise. Moving on to opportunities that have arisen or have come up. In terms of hotels, we've found ourselves really a hopeless situation in some locations that even if we wanted to open, it was the LGUs that were forcing them to close. Or if not the LGUs, it's concerns from the family. So they have had to deal with restrictions from their families, especially from their wives, I guess. So it's been difficult to find a reason. Also, deliveries from suppliers have been very difficult in some cases. But you just have to become resourceful in the sense that in our case, when our restaurants could not operate, quickly we had to rethink of what we can do. And we had to recalibrate and move into deliveries. And we've seen that a lot of people are already, a lot of establishments, a lot of SMEs are already doing this as restaurants. However, it was something new to us. We learned fast. We took advantage of the PFA network in just looking at the Viber groups or at the sites in the PFA. And we saw that this delivery service is now active, is open, and that, for example, we learned that before it was just Grab food. Now they were open to delivery of not necessarily through Grab food, and also Lala and other delivery services. So those have been very, very handy tools for us. What's the learning there for us? It's flexibility in being able to recalibrate quick enough and to take opportunities as they come. So prior to the lockdown, it was very important to us that we already had standards in place. Ergo, the result was that it was easy to implement business continuity programs because the teams were already familiar with what to do. Even the guests that we had, these were multinationals, they were comfortable with us because we had become part of their business continuity projects. So in an instant when ECQ was put in place, we were able to quickly respond to the client's needs. I'm talking about the large corporations. Next item, I think that is quite important in learning as we go along is that having a franchise to lean on is very important. It's like a family that you have a built-in 911 that you can ask a team within the industry that can answer similar situations that they are facing. And you can find that people are very, very willing to share ideas, solutions on situational problems. That, I think, is a very, very powerful proposition for having a franchise and being part of a network of organizations compared to if you would be just an independent enterprise or independent firm, especially if you are a small one. The next item that I would like to share is, I think it's very important that we have a company such as the size of ours is a solid leadership with clear lines of jurisdictions in the team. Because of that, it's easy to fill in the gaps and or vacancies on weaknesses because there is a management team or a leadership team that is able to answer and make quick decisions for whatever is needed. It is important to have a solid chain of command, again, to support the leadership. Because of that, it's easy to implement changes, be flexible, be agile, and quick to react, as I said earlier, and can easily identify who are the strong or the weak links within the organization. So it's very important that we don't encounter the period of teka or indecision.
Harry, we're losing your video. Can you please check
Uh-huh.
out? We're losing your video.
What happened there? Am I back on? No?
Yeah. There, you're back.
Okay. I think, okay. Um, okay. As I said earlier, it's very important to have a solid chain of command. Again, it's very easy to implement changes, be flexible, be agile, and avoid the indecision or teka. And it's also very important that your team, especially your management team, is very comfortable with each other and that they are all traveling on the same page. Because, again, communication is easy. Decisions are made very quickly, and that there is no wasted time in guessing. In our case, we established a communication line, and we find very effective our Viber group, all the way from the top, from myself, all the way down to our casuals. They're all welcome to join those Viber groups. So that's very, very important. As I said earlier, we have had opportunities to um, be a little bit flexible with our business model. But I think there's a lot of sharing that has been done about that. But moving forward, and this is to stay to the framework of being a part of the beyond part of the presentation of Kay, is we've done a lot of scenario planning. And I think a lot of what if from A to Z is very important, really, because we cannot really guess enough. Guess estimates are still estimates, but still based on a guess. Um, so even if it's a tiring exercise of scenario planning, A to Z and beyond is really very, very important, because when you do resume business, it'll be important that you have had um, to answer, at least in your mind, how am I going to pay my loans, or how am I going to get back my guests, or how am I going to get back my staff. So because of that, or how do you do scenario planning like that, is the more heads, the better, I think, as they know the situation on the ground. I think involving people who are below the ladder is very important. It's also very important to network, and do a lot of readings, such as the one shared by SGV and Ernst and Young. There are a lot of even their competitors are doing the same, like Rice Waterhouse and KPMG, I guess. So there's a lot of them available online. Banks are doing the same, a lot of sharing of this research material, universities and research institutions. Also, a lot of models that are being raised or put online by international organizations, while they may not be 100% applicable to the Philippines, I think there's a lot to pick up on. Anyway, our firms are still patterned after the Western institution. So I think that's something that we can all tap on. And then, of course, as everybody keep on saying, let's always think of the human side and the labor side of our enterprise. It's important for us to keep our teams intact. Let us sacrifice by being there at this time for them, because this is the time of need that we are needed and we are in a position to help. It's because they will be the ones to help us when we jumpstart and when we reboot. or even if we pick up the pieces of really something that we think is a no hope scenario already. But if we don't take care of them now, one, they may find another job, or um, they should be on day one that we call them to report back to work. They should be in good health, not only physically but mentally, and also in emotional, ready to go, ready to jump back to work. For the hospitality industry, there will be a new normal. What that new normal will be, I don't know what it will be. It will really be very different for us, let's say in hotels with big function rooms, with big banquet facilities. Those will be empty for a very long time. Gone for a while will be big weddings of 300, maybe even 500. The MICE business, MICE is meetings, incentives, conference, and exhibits. That will be gone for a long time. And all of those support suppliers that provide audio, lighting, and within the hotel, just the food, that will be gone for a long time, just because of the need for social distancing. The ones that we think that may resurface rather, not quickly, but maybe if they are able to retool themselves, will maybe restaurants, but maybe only allowed to 50% of capacity. So can you imagine having a date with 6 meters apart from your date? So that is not going to be a very romantic situation for those that are going out on a date. So for the hotels that are here, we are banking on the domestic market. We think that the international market will really take a long time before they recover, as people will be having to take those airplane rides and probably avoid them. But people who will want to travel and just get out of their homes and maybe travel 3 to 4 hours away from where they are, those are the resorts and locations that will probably pick up the pieces quite fast.
Right.
That's it, I guess. And the last thing is stay in touch with your customers for whatever it is. Really, they are the loyal ones. They are our loyalists that will come back fast enough.
All
That's
right.
it for me, Carl and Che. And I
Thank you
hope
very
that was something there.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you so much, Marie.
All right.
Yes, sure.
My favorite line is having a franchise is having a family to lean on. Family with 911. I love that. That's true. It's happening to me, She. No, that's the beauty of franchise.
Yes.
We're not alone. Yeah, we're not alone. And I'm glad that it's franchising sector. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of you are taking down beautiful notes and quotable quotes. Some of these quotes are also flashed in PFA Facebook, so you can quote them from the speakers in case you missed them. And for those who are asking for how to get the slides, I'd like to tell you it's in PFA. But how will you get it? Later on. Cheryl will.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Che.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to our third panelist, who will represent the food sector in the franchising industry. Our third panelist is the founder and president of famous Belgian Waffles with more than 500 branches nationwide and a branch in San Diego, California, and Malaysia. So we'll ask partner later how many percent are still open right now and how are they doing. He is also the president and founder of P&G Environmental Management Corporation, a waste management company that offers engineering and consultancy services to LGU units. In addition to that, he is currently a lecturer at the Philippine Trade and Training Center of the Department of Trade and Industry. Aside from trainings, you also help PTPC in developing entrepreneurship, franchising, marketing, and strategic planning modules for their business lecture caravan. Our panelists earned his master's degree in entrepreneurship at the Asian Institute of Management in 2007. And in the same year, he was a delegation member sent by AIM to Yokohama Kensho Center, Japan, commissioned to develop entrepreneurship program for the Philippine society. Also a certified franchise executive. Now, without further ado, let's hear it from Mr. Euclid Cesar. Good afternoon,
Hi,
Euclid.
Hi, President She. Dr. Carl, hi. Good afternoon.
Hi, good
Can you
afternoon.
hear me well?
Yeah, very well.
Okay, good. It's not too loud naman.
Well, it's okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, first, thank you for having me here and for the privilege for this discussion. And let me immediately start in discussing what's now going on in our company, Famous Belgian Waffles. First, what we are doing now is having a full transparency. That's very important for us, no? The transparency to all stakeholders. We just had our virtual meeting with our MANCOM. And of course, this will be followed by dialogues with the rest of the officers and personnel. We also conducted 2 weeks ago a survey on the various options of the companies on how we can survive this crisis. The reason we asked for this survey because we don't want to monopolize the decision making that we will do in our organization. We want everybody to be part and somehow to get their insight on how we can come up with a solution eventually. We also extended some assistance to our personnel aside from the early release of their 13-month. And on the side note na lang, unfortunately, what I heard from them is all of them have not yet received any help from the government. No? But I'm sure it's just a matter of timing. Our general manager and franchise directors, they're both tasked to communicate regularly with the franchisees. We also want to get their views and suggestions on how we can traverse the roads ahead. Their views are very, very important to us. That's why 100% of our franchises will be us eventually. And our key officers are also in touch with the suppliers to know their current status and to know what we can expect from them after the lockdown. In this way, we can be prepared if there will be some supply interruption, and it's all for us to come up with contingency measure if needed. I hope there will be no problem at all on their part, and I hope every suppliers are okay by this time. I'm not a pessimist person, but I need to be realistic this time. And from now, from now to the next few months, I think our business will slow down or shrink in size. This is very inevitable. Uh, we are going to operate in a couple of weeks from now, but I don't think we can recover and make money immediately. So I guess the first order of the day is to stay afloat and survive, even if we face several months or even years of recessions. I hope I'm wrong on this. We will lie low for a while and close low performing branches. This very pragmatic solution that we can do immediately. And we will ask lessors then for rental discount. And thank you in advance to, especially to the big malls that most of our branches are located, for immediately granting the waiving of rent. They announced this even on the first week of the lockdown. So thank you for that, and I hope you will continue to support us furthermore. Inevitably, the closure will have major impact to some of our personnel. The next things that we will do in the coming months is once we operate again, our R&D will spearhead the innovation of our product, the Belgian waffles sandwich. And we might create a bundle meal to promote takeout and make delivery as our core business now. This activity might result a creation of cloud kitchen, which I'm also encouraging all businesses who are in the food retail business. This will hopefully compensate to the eventual closure of some branches. We will also adjust our marketing and social media activities and gear it towards the delivery and takeout behavior of the consumers. And besides, our Belgian waffle sandwich is a great snack for the whole family while watching movies together, which is the normal days now, no? The normal activity of every family there is. I really think this will be the new normal from now on. The way of doing business will be also be altered. We will have more virtual meetings in the office and as well as with our franchisees. We will also identify some functions that are applicable to work at home setup. But of course, key operations officers and function will remain the same. Uh, for beyond, which is 6 months and beyond, uh, with all honestly, I don't have much to say on this because I believe no amount of corporate planning and strategy can match the external factors that affects our business, like the people's fear, slow and decreasing spending, low foot traffic in the malls, and the likes. We don't know when all these things can be solved unless there's a breakthrough in the development of the vaccine for this virus. Nevertheless, as entrepreneur, I will just keep my eyes open and be ready to react immediately to whatever opportunities and threats that we will counter eventually. And so that's for famous Belgian waffles case now. And before I end my talk, I would like to thank SGV, particularly Kay, for that very insightful material. I can't wait for the email of that material. We will use it in our discussion with the management. And for PFA, special to Ma'am Cheat, Sir Sami, Ma'am Bing, and the rest of the officers of PFA, you're doing a great job. This is very patriotic, and what you're doing is very passionate in helping, especially the SME in the country. And we're praying for everybody and for the whole world that we hope to recover from this crisis as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Euclid. And we are very grateful for you to saying yes to the webinar. I know all of you have been parang ano na, no? Short notice talaga, Doc Carl.
Short notice pa
So,
yan,
a
ha?
lot,
Short notice
oo.
pa yung lagay na yan, and we are having hundreds, almost thousands of participants, and we are being hosted in different watch parties, ha, partner? Through our PFA
Yes.
Facebook. Oh, can you imagine that?
And our Q&A box is also very flooded. Ang dami nating questions, Doc
And
Carl.
the good news is, si Miss Kay is very good at multitasking. You know, while she was listening, she already answered some of the questions. But of course, some questions are worth asking publicly because it would be very similar to every other participant. Okay. First question to Miss
Yes.
Kay, if we can proceed. By the way, ang maganda kong nakalimutan sabihin kanina is indeed you cannot improve but you cannot measure. And I think the value of the tool is it provides for measurement. And therefore, if we want to really manage, we have to measure, and that's a good starting point. If I may ask these questions, I'll just ask it in random. Forgive me if I could not mention your name already because we're clustering. Okay, the question is, most of our businesses are MSMEs. Is the tool applicable to MSMEs?
Yeah, definitely. So I really think that the tool is useful regardless of the size of the business or your organization. Because if you look at it, the key areas or the resiliency themes are really the key or critical areas in your businesses. And you can't get away with not looking into what are the key considerations in those areas.
Which is 300,
Um,
yeah, if I may mention, 360 really. It's looking into every essential.
Yes, yes, exactly. However, it's really up to you to assess or maybe evaluate which ones you would want to prioritize first. So
Right.
I mentioned earlier, maybe you want to focus on your people. That is putting people or humans at the center, and then likely maybe themes around customer, supply chain, and technology. I think those are some of the areas that I would maybe put in second, and then the rest you can revisit, and maybe I forgot to expand earlier, like in insurance and recovery. Now is also the time to revisit. Maybe you have some insurance policies that can actually help you alleviate maybe some of the challenges that you're seeing in your business. And maybe on the other side, there might be a risk wherein maybe your contracts with your clients, if you're not able to fulfill, there might be penalties. So you might want to go about talking to your customers and more or less assess how you can renegotiate or work on what you're currently going through.
Yeah. Parang yung sinabi rin ni Mari kanina, no, na keep that line with the customers. After all, they are your loyal supporters and fans club for the sustainability of your business. Then let me just follow it up with this. Being new in the pandemic and having all of us having very limited view on this, where is the starting point? That's the first question. And related to that is, how far ahead should we estimate in our projection?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if I may answer, I think the answer to that is to start now. There's no better. I mean, you could have started maybe yesterday, but obviously we can't do that anymore. But I think the best time to really start thinking about this is now. And then in terms of the horizons, of course, there's a lot of fluidity in how things are developing nowadays. So my suggestion is to make sure that you reassess this regularly and adjust your time frame or your horizons. Um, I think when the lockdown was announced, parang we hear about it. I think there are already rumors that are circulating on social media, Viber groups, and I think for some reason most of us are still surprised when it was actually mandated, and that is in a way an eye opener for us that we can't stop revisiting, we can't stop planning, we can't stop reassessing how we can bring our businesses into resiliency. So your timeframes might adjust. And I think Miss Marie mentioned this earlier, no, having different scenarios and planning against it, thinking about the what ifs, and then having some key action steps that you can take to make sure that you are keeping your business into resiliency.
Yeah. Sabi pa nga niya is what if from A to Z. If I
Yeah.
got it right, ano? And resurface, retool. And there are some questions for Mari. Mari, I'd like to ask you this. Thank you daw to PFA for having considered ang hospitality and tourism industry. Of course, this is very close to the heart of our father, to Sami Lim, no? Uh, what are your suggestions to the members of the tourism industry so they can recover quicker than next year? Because I think somebody projected, I think it was who projected, Glenn projected that the pre-COVID situation is expected in quarter 4 of 2022. The question is, how do we recover quicker? And babasahin ko na rin yung susunod. Being in the hospitality and tourism industry, what is your opinion or suggestion of hotels refusing to book health workers or OFWs to the Philippines? That's a very sensitive question. And the last comes from Nikki, and she's asking from Davao, I'm just wondering, what are the active steps are you taking in making sure that your hotels are COVID-free now? What are your plans in case a hotel gets contaminated, especially that there's a greater risk of exposure? And lastly, how can we encourage travelers to have staycation post-COVID? Yes, please. Mari.
Dami nun ah.
Suggestions to bounce
Can
back.
you hear that?
Your quick recovery. What's your
Yeah.
suggestion?
Well, I think in our case, the ones that are focused on and being flexible, let's say if you are focused mainly on international travelers, then if you shift to the domestic traveler, domestic tourism, I think you have a very big chance of getting getting some occupancy, especially those that are maybe in the resorts. They have just focused primarily, let's say, on the Korean market or European market for those that are high end. Let's say if your resort is primarily, say, diving or diving resort, then if you can start welcoming families instead. As I said, if you're just focused on the foreign market, shift to the domestic market. And you would even be surprised that some of the resorts are an interesting destination for local suppliers when they start having small meetings. Small meetings market is as a thriving market as well. What's the next one? The one that is refusing to take in health workers, I think.
Yeah, that's the next one.
Yeah. Well, number one, you're losing revenue if you're not willing to take in. Number two is the social side of it. I think you're really missing out on the goodwill that I think that can be established, and those that are willing to help, I think, just in the eyes of God, will probably be able to reap the benefits when we all get back to the new normal. So, but I understand, because the next question is also related. It says, how can you ensure that your hotels are COVID-free and this and that? Well, we follow guidelines, and in fact, we engage third-party suppliers, reputable ones, accredited, that can do professional sanitation. And this is really just a matter of discipline. You know, the hand washing, the taking of temperature, and sanitizing your elevators and all of that. Those are the ones that really help. In fact, we've established, we put wash basins right at the entrance of the hotel, and forcing the guests to wash their hands even before they step into the hotel. So that's unheard of, right? So, and putting foot bath mats, foot mats. So those are those little steps, and everything is available on the Department of Health guidelines. If you just follow them closely, I think you will have sufficient information on how to move forward.
Just research about it. And Mari, this is personal, something I'd like to ask, because I have a resort in Calapan. And initially, of course, the fear of every resort is to be associated with positive COVID. And because of goodwill, my wife and I decided to open it to the health workers instead of, looking for customers that will never come. So what we did was to open it to the nurses who were, quarantined, etc. And the DOH people, I did not care whether I will be associated with COVID positive or COVID quarantine process. What's your comment on that strategy that we adopted?
Well, as I said earlier, if you just follow the guidelines of the DOH, just look at the practical side of it. There are even guidelines on how long a possible piece of virus of this can stay in a surface, whether it's plastic or stainless steel or glass or wood. So if you just air your resort and leave it vacant, let's say for maybe several days, and put off the aircon, I think you're very well off already, and do the sanitation guidelines and washing and all of the surfaces. I think you're going to be okay.
It's by the beach anyway. So you can just imagine the advantage of the salinized air, etc. And you know what? Let me just share that.
The seawater will take care of that.
And you know what? We gained respect of the community for doing that. I think when you do something so good, there is a natural tendency for people to admire and patronize later on. All right. So
what I said earlier, in the eyes of God, you will be the first one to reap it.
In fact, tomorrow I will host about 20 DOH people in the resort. And, we just want to give them the opportunity to rest and relax and not only to sleep. It's something they love and look forward to. Anyway, the next question has something to do with she quoted the blue ocean, which came from the red ocean, which is the blue sky, whatever color and whatever location there is. The question is, and this goes to anybody, we mentioned about the new normal. So what are the new markets? If there are new normals, there must be new markets. And what are the new businesses that may be tapped and may be seen as opportunities seeing all this new normal? Anybody from the panel or from Kay, if that is something you want to answer? I repeat, considering that we all agree that there is a new normal, there is definitely a conclusion that there are new markets in that blue ocean. What are these new businesses that may be tapped, in your opinion, in your observation? Anybody may just unmute and answer. Euclid, yes, please.
In our case, Carla, with the consumer's behavior, I think that's going to alter the behavior of our current customer. So they're the same people, but with a new buying behavior, buying pattern. Originally, of course, they're the mall goers, but eventually, I think they will have to have our products consumed in their own house together with the family. So the opportunity there is to cater or to serve more or in bulk per customer transaction. So that's what I see in our case.
Okay, the others, please.
Yeah.
Would you like to give some insights, Glenn? Maybe as a business leader also, are you seeing new oceans or new
Well,
skies?
well, if I remember my blue ocean correctly, it's about creating a new value curve
Yeah.
and understanding that value curve, and how that meets the needs of the consumer. So I think what's important to understand now is that, even if the lockdown is lifted, people's behaviors are going to be different. So if, for example, as a consumer myself, if the lockdown were lifted tomorrow, I still wouldn't be going to the mall like what Euclid mentioned, because there's no vaccine. So even if I continue to practice social distancing or physical distancing, and I'm very conscious about washing my hands, I think that the way I would approach my as a consumer, my needs as a consumer is to have it delivered to the office or at home. So I guess that's one of the things that we can look at, and given that that is the case, am I prepared for that? So how does that change now fuel consumption? So if people are gonna consume their food at home, then I would be looking at maybe the Lalo Moves, the Joyrides or Angkas, or how can we help support these logistics companies in making those deliveries. So I guess that would be perspective of someone who is in the oil and gas sector.
All right. Thank you very much. There's an interesting question here. I think Kay will answer this. What do you think should be addressed more, preferably, or first, current or the potentially unknown challenges? Very, philosophical, but
That's tricky.
uh,
Actually, it's a
which
parang ano siya, no?
is it the parang Boy Abunda, right? Or quick answer.
Yeah,
Current versus potentially unknown challenge. And number
yeah.
two is manpower versus technology. What do you think should be the priority in the decision making?
Yeah, so on the first question, so if I got it correctly, the first question is which should I address first? Should I address the now or yung potential challenges that might surface in the long run or maybe in the next few months? My I think I touched on this earlier, yung duality of strategy, wherein you keep your eyes on the now, and
Mhm.
mainly because it's crisis mode at the moment. Of course, it's good and it's an imperative as well that you address it. Because if you don't take care of what's in the now, maybe there's not even a future to think about.
Yeah.
But in the duality of strategy mode, it's having one eye on the now and one eye on what is going to happen. So that's why you need to be able to anticipate and balance the demand or needs of the current and the future. So you can, honestly, I don't think you can just pick one. You need
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And as leaders, it is imperative upon you to make sure that you don't just address the short-term objectives of your business, but actually making it a sustainable one, and
Yeah.
that can deliver value in the long run as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's the answer.
not true anymore that take care of today and tomorrow will take care of itself. Huh? We
Yeah, I think that's too risky if you ask me.
There's a beautiful question here that I think everybody in franchising should be able to answer, including you, She. I'll put you on the spot, partner. Sabi niya, because she's considering to get 2 franchises for the year because she believes that 2020 is a good year to invest. Sabi niya, what is the future of franchising with social distancing, restricted movement, and uncertain financial circumstances? What's the prospect of franchising?
Yeah, that was actually what we're talking about yesterday. We had our Zoom meeting also with the Philippine Franchise Association Execom and the leaders. And well, a lot are of course in different sectors or industries inside franchising. As you can see, partner, no, we are from different industries inside franchising. So we are not just into retail or food. We also have our members from service and from the service sector as well. So as the leaders have been saying, there are studies to show that franchising is good during the best of times, but
All right.
it is also very good in times of crisis, because this in a period of uncertainty, in a period of crisis, investing into something that has a a higher rate of winnability, so the investors are actually into it. So
Yeah.
franchising is also very good in times of crisis.
Yes.
And naman the strengths of franchising is not just dependent on a particular sector, but definitely with its characteristic of using other people's resources, and so yon. That's
Even if we may really sound biased because we're leaders in franchising, but the fact and the truth is, it's good to do business together, and franchising is doing business with others. Okay, di ba?
Yes, partner. Tsaka, as we can see, di ba, for the past ikapihans that we've been doing, a lot of our entrepreneurs in the franchising, a lot of our franchisors are even sharing that even earlier, our panelists were sharing that their franchises or the franchising system that is in place actually gave them the opportunity to survive. Kasi
Correct.
some of the franchisors are not able to hold business,
Alright.
pero the franchising system in place for their companies are able to redeem them
Yeah.
agad, no?
Okay.
So
Actually,
it's really supporting one another.
it's actually for Euclid. Euclid, someone is curious because you mentioned you'd like to close down some slow performing stores. The question is, how do you support them? The next question is related to have you do we have now some models that looks into some relaxation of franchise royalties? Meron ba tayong pinag-uusapan na ganon? So, what are your
Yes.
close down store and how do you support them? Yes, Euclid.
Well, in closure of some branches, where I'm talking about mostly company-owned branches. At this point, I cannot speak on behalf of our franchisees. Maybe in a few weeks now, we can have their views and opinions on what's going to happen to them next. And we cannot force them to operate, even if they're losing, especially if they're losing already.
Yeah.
Maybe just a support to our franchises, if we can extend our franchise terms to them. And for example, in our case, let's say it's only 3 years. I'm thinking of extending the 3 years just to compensate the critical period that we lost. And the waiving of royalty fee is going to be one of the offering as well. I think we have. I think we can accommodate it. And the other probably other help that I don't want to mention here, Muna, at numerous several assistance to franchisees will
Yeah.
be offered, or in order for them to be operational after this lockdown. We don't want to lose anybody here.
Yeah.
And one of our mottos in our organization is no one left behind. That's
Very good.
our golden motto in our
Very good.
franchise.
I intentionally asked that question. After that question, I put Cheryl on the spot. Kasi I know that the answer will be we will not leave them behind. And I think that's a common story and common strategy of everyone in amongst the franchisor. All right? That's beautiful. And meron ditong tanong kasi it takes a few days, like a month or two daw to create a habit. The question is, any insight if food delivery service will still be a hit after COVID? Parang maybe after COVID, ayaw na natin kumain sa bahay. Will we all go out or will it be a continuing thing that we'll see in the future? Yeah. Diba? It's either we develop the habit of staying at home and eating at home or got so used to it and we don't like it anymore that we want to go out. Euclid, what is your read?
I totally agree on that, Carl, that this temporary situation that we have will create a permanent behavior. Especially if you just discovered that it's really fun to have movie nights with the family, so might as well have some snacks while watching with the family, right? So we
You
just
have
discovered, some of us might just discover that it's cool to be with one another, even during the puyat moment, every night.
Yeah. And we'd like to acknowledge Miss Alice Liu, one of the members of the board of PFA, watching, and all the other PFA board. Alam ko, Cheryl, maybe you would like to acknowledge them, please.
Yeah, yes, we're acknowledging the members of the Board of Trustees and the participants, as well as all the members of the PFA family. So we've been asking earlier nga, related to franchising industry. We also have surveys and studies being conducted now. So I'm encouraging all of you, all of the participants from PFA family watching right now to take participation so that we can move forward together. Doc Carl, you also have a share of questions to be answered in the, you're not spared.
Yeah, education. Go ahead, ask me. I would love
Correct,
to
in the education sector.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tama, because we're even, this morning during breakfast, that is also part of our discussion, with the, because yung eldest ko is in the University of the Philippines. Hindi pa sila tapos ng klase when the lockdown happened. So, and now there's a declaration that the universities and schools will be ending by April 30. So they were even asking me, what will be the new normal for education in the coming year? Okay lang daw ang enrollment. So I know that you've been reaching out ASAP kaagad. And you've been doing this naman even before this happened, through e-learning. But will that be new normal? How is the education sector?
Actually, the question I would have asked, pero I knew you will ask me this. Ang question is, will face-to-face training and education after the ECQ be still relevant, considering that we have a new online training delivery methods? This is my answer to that question. Education is not only learning to learn or learning to know. Education has components of learning to do. And that is probably something you cannot just teach and measure just by virtual means. And that's the learning to do part. But there's more. There are two more. The learning to be. The learning to be is difficult to learn only virtually in a virtual space like this. This is called the virtual space in learning. And the last is the learning to live together. I think the school, being a social environment, is not only teaching the cognitive part, but also the psychomotor, the skills part, and more importantly, the affective, the attitude part, which I think the social nature of every classroom and every interaction of a teacher and a student, or a learner and a trainer, is something we would like to see on a face-to-face. That's why if there is one profession that will never be replaced, that is the teaching profession. Why? Because there is more into teaching and learning than just by putting it in the head. Because the teacher should be able to measure it, the teacher should be able to validate it, and more importantly, the learning should be able to be applied. And that application is what comes not only in a virtual conference like this, but I think it will continue. But this technology we're learning to use in learning and teaching will supplement and will definitely simplify some of the processes of learning in the future. So this is good discovery. And hello, Cheryl, I should be asking you this question. Is ikapihan going to be a permanent thing of PFA? I heard that question in one of the, is it going to be a permanent thing? Because look how beautiful this is. 1,000 people gathered right now. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, actually, no, we were even happily surprised, diba, Doc Carl? Because when we had this initiated weeks ago on the first week of the ECQ, so we were just, planning this to provide support to our members, no, to the PFA family. But then the warm reception of the participants from the public,
Yeah.
talagang gave us the motivation to do this. So I
Correct.
think yes, it's going to be here for some time, but our next session would be
Next
uh
Wednesday,
29 na. Yes, so it's not going to be next week, Doc Carl.
29th. Good. And something to look forward to. And by the way, if you have suggested topics for PFA to cover, please chat it now so that we can document it. The Secretariat is waiting for it. And yeah, I think it's... I also would like to promote that on Friday, partner, with your permission, on Friday, the professor, the executive director of the Stanford and National University of Singapore Executive Lead Management Program, Dr. Love,
Yes.
we call him Dr. Prem, will be will be a speaker also in a conference. This is going to be at 10 o'clock Friday. If you want to register, you see my Facebook and there's a way to register there. Thank you very much. Dr. Love or Dr. Prem from NUS will be joined by Professor Deans of UST, Deans of LaSalle, and Dean of Miriam College. So this is the academic lens of Fearless Forecast Post-COVID. So please join us there. All right. So,
Yes, we are supporting that, partner, for Friday. So
yes.
again, for those who are asking if they're going to have a copy of the tool as well as the presentation of Miss Kay. So the background of that kasi, SGB, and we're very thankful for SGB and company that they shared the tool to us right away. So last week yan. And so we asked them if we can share it to our members and share it here at the e-copyhan, and they said yes right away. So we have all the list of your emails, those who participated this afternoon. So the PFA will be facilitating the sharing of the presentations.
Only
As
to
well
those
as
who attended, partner. That's something clear.
yes,
Only to those
yes.
who attended this conference.
Yes, partner. And also kasi, no, when they answer the tool, the assessment, as well as go through the presentation, binanggit naman yun kanina ni Ms. Kay. If those companies who need help, they can get in touch with her or through the email that we will be sharing. Kasi syempre mahirap naman, partner, no, to just go through that, tapos you'll not be able to reap the benefit, no, to be applied to your company.
All right. So final words. May we have from Euclid. I think one of the young Kay is the youngest, but Euclid, please do the honor of your final pitch.
Well, nothing more to say, but stay safe, everybody. God bless. Thank you.
And Marie, one of the pillars of hospitality now, especially that sector he created for us. Yes, Marie Del Rosario.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carl and Che, for inviting me. It was a real pleasure. I'm not very used to this, but I hope I did justice to what I was supposed to do. Thank you very much again, and good luck to everybody.
We learned from you very surely. And of course, Glenn Yu of Sea Oil.
Yes, for those of you who are watching this kapihan, I just wanted to tell you that in 2008, during the global financial crisis, parang that was Sea Oil's big break. If I remember correctly, after 2008, between 2008 to 2015, Sea Oil grew 10 times in 7 years. So, crisis can really be an opportunity. And let me just encourage you with that. I know that things may not be looking up for many of you today, but if you think critically and use this as an opportunity, I'm sure you're gonna bounce back.
All right. And of course, to Miss Kay, ako Tomas yan. Go to stay.
Ghost eh. Yeah, so I guess last a few words to say would be more on yeah, everybody's going through the same thing. It's a time of crisis, and usually this is the time wherein we see the best in people or the worst in people. So I hope that we use this opportunity, as mentioned earlier by Glenn, to see the upsides and seize the upsides of this particular disruption and prepare for resiliency. I guess that's it for me. I hope you all you learned something from us today. I had fun and very grateful and honored to be part of this group. I learned a lot from the panelists as well. Praying for better days to come for everyone. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. And of course, partner, kung pag sinabing
Yes.
resilience kasi, pag pinag-usapan ng resilience, and it will be symbolized through a plant, you will always remember the bamboo, right? Because after the storm, the bamboos will still remain standing. But the bamboo together will actually make it even stronger. And always remember we're bamboos, di ba? And
Yes.
survive this. Partner, go ahead. Your final shot.
Tama, partner. And so at this point, I also would like uh, to extend our thank yous, and we're really very grateful to our panelists, to our speakers who generously shared with our participants, no, every week. Uh, so that, partner, a lot are asking, no, why is it that we're having this? Why are we having these exchanges? So the entrepreneurs are actually heavily hit, but I'd like to address it to them that even if we're undergoing economic crisis, we surely can prevent sliding this to become a social crisis, partner. So that's the reason why we are trying to adapt and move together as one family. So with that, thank you so much, partner.
Thank you very
So our
much.
next session will be
Sa 29, sabi mo?
April 29, yes.
Okay.
And
Iwanan
that
ko,
will be, yes.
iwanan ko lang yung na-create ko kanina, listening to everybody. Yung CEB is my initial. C stands for check. Check for your survival. Check the situation and check for solutions. E is explore. Explore possibilities, be creative, and B is build so that you can transform considering the new norms. And ayun, yun ang aking contribution sa ating lahat today. And partner, please allow me, I would like to flash this, yung aking event, na siya. Anyway, on Friday, pakihanap na lang ko sa Facebook ko. On Friday, the professor from National University of will be our special guest, together with the deans of UST, LaSalle, and Miriam College. All right. So thank you very much. This has been Carl Balita. And in behalf of the Philippine Franchise Association, my partner, the beautiful
Yes.
Quintana, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody. See you next time.
God bless. God is good. We'll be over this. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Kay.
That's Nishki
Thank you,
talking.
Professor.
Thanks, Secretariat. PFA Secretariat, you're so good. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Secretariat. Thank you, Dr. Carl. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Franchise Association, my partner.